Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to this productivity talk by the Asian Productivity Organization. I'm Gözde Bosnalı from the APO Secretariat and today's moderator. The APO is an international organization committed to improving productivity in the Asia-Pacific region. The APO P-Talks are a platform where innovative ideas for productivity enhancement are addressed by experts, practitioners, and academics. Before we start, I would like to thank our viewers for following us, and to learn about upcoming P-Talks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can leave your comments and questions in the chat box, and we will answer them after the session. As a trending concept, executive coaching stands out as a transformative practice that empowers leaders and individuals to unleash their full potential and drive significant growth. Its profound impact extends to enhancing productivity through fostering inclusion, teamwork, and strategic decision-making. Today's P-Talk highlights the role of executive coaching as a critical tool for enterprises aiming to foster leadership skills and improve overall productivity. Our guest speaker today is Jennifer Shinkai, Ikigai and Inclusion Facilitator and Coach. Jennifer will delve into the transformative power of executive coaching to boost productivity with practical strategies and real-life success stories. Welcome to our studio, Jennifer. It's a very pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. So before we start, let me give a little background about you to our viewers. So Jennifer Shinkai is originally from the UK and holds an MA in English Language and Literature from Oxford University. She's currently a professional certified coach, Points of View Master, and Organization and Relationship Systems coach. She focuses on integrating Ikigai into daily work, inclusion in diverse workplaces, and resilient leadership development. With over 25 years experience in Japan, she has held a variety of management roles focusing on learning and development, marketing, and sales operations. Jennifer is also a frequent public speaker and panel moderator on diversity and inclusion, work style reform, empowering women, and coaching on related topics. She has her YouTube channel named Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai and hosts very inspiring guests who follows their Ikigai. So Jennifer, I'm very eager to listen from you today about this interesting topic. So you can please start your presentation.
Great, thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for inviting me here today. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I want to just add an extra point about the type of clients that I work with as a coach. So most of my clients are based across Asia Pacific, and they tend to be working in multinational companies, and they are from manager to senior leaders. So all of the examples that I'm giving, all of the conversations that we'll be sharing today are going to be based on that specific area of expertise and area of experience. So your experience with coaching might be quite different. So I'm just telling you where I'm coming from there. So getting into what we're going to talk about today, we'll start off with a little bit of discovery into human performance and why we need to focus on human performance as part of productivity right now. Then I want to do some myth busting around coaching, what it is and what it's not, how we can use it in an organization, and as well as from my perspective, two of the things that come up most frequently in coaching conversations that impact human performance and productivity, and how coaching can be used by organizations to support that and to help people be more productive, be more effective, and really have more fun at work is where I'm coming from. And then I'd like to bust a few more myths and answer some questions around how to engage a coach. I feel like coaching is sometimes a kind of black box and people are not really sure what's happening, what's not happening. So I hope I can shed some light on that. So if you feel like coaching might be the right use for your organization right now, you will have a place to start to help your team and help your people to be more productive and improve their performance. So let's dive right in. Just this year, coming out from Deloitte was their Global Human Capital Trends. And one of the interesting things that is coming, especially around knowledge workers, is that as you can read on here, the lines between the tangible outcomes is becoming more blurred. And a lot of people are asked to work in very complex networks, in hybrid organizations, and really using a demand for very sophisticated skills that aren't as easily observed by some of the traditional productivity metrics. And I think in many of these P talks and in the work of APO is talking about how do we look at, next generation of productivity as well. And coaching is really focusing in that area. And why is it important that we think about that right now? In Japan, I'm living in a country with an aging population, with a falling working population, but it's not just affecting the job market in Japan. As you can see here, by 2030, it's looking like 85 million jobs worldwide will be unfilled due to the smaller pool of workers available to succeed. And when I was doing my research around this, I was like, 85 million, what is that? It's the population of Turkey. It's more than the population of Germany. This is a huge number of people not being available in the workplace and jobs going unfulfilled. So your talent pool is getting smaller and your talent pool is getting stressed. So according to a survey this year by LinkedIn and Microsoft, they asked about 30,000 people globally in 130 countries, something like that. Are you thinking of leaving work, quitting your job this year? And 46% of those professionals surveyed said, yes, I'm thinking about it, in the next 6 to 9 months of quitting my job. And also that talent that is working for you right now. So maybe they're thinking of leaving, but they're also exhausted. They are feeling negative emotions in the workplace and increased cases of burnout. And I'm definitely feeling that amongst the knowledge workers and the leaders that I am working with. The pace of change in organizations is very fast. The requirements are continuing to grow, and people are not being engaged in the workplace. So this is the background as to why we need to think about coaching as a possible tool to support reducing the sense of burnout, reducing the negative emotions, and for people to feel energized and engaged and want to stay in your organization as well. So let me bust these myths about coaching, because coaching often gets mistaken for things that it is not. So first of all, let me share with you the International Coaching Federation definition. So coaching is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. And the process of coaching often unlocks previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. And one of the images that the ICF likes to use to describe this is imagining you are in a car on a journey, and you as the client or the coachee, and I will use those two words interchangeably today, you as the coachee are driving. You are setting the goals. You are setting the direction. But your coach is a supportive passenger. Maybe they're giving some checks of like, why do we want to go in this direction? What are you imagining is going to be at our destination? And how do you want to get there? So they're not a backseat driver who's telling you what to do and giving unhelpful advice, or maybe helpful advice. They're really supporting you, cheering you on as a passenger. But it's always the client, the coachee, who is driving the process, literally. And coaching often gets mistaken for some of the other very valuable interventions which are around there. But I'd like to share with you a little bit about how coaching is different to those other interventions. So counseling is really focused on overcoming past trauma. We're looking at healing, the sources of the trauma, and how we can move through them. Consulting is really when the consultant comes in as an expert, they have advice, they know what and how you need to do to improve. So it's very telling, not as in telling in that way, but telling you what to do way. Mentoring is really about having someone who has usually been there, done that. An expert in the field who's maybe working in your industry, is more senior to you, able to give guidance on what to do, what not to do. Training is about acquiring the skills and filling the knowledge gap. And the trainer is there, as an expert, often at the front of the room. And then for the participant, the trainee, their role is to take that knowledge and then apply it to the workplace. So it is, again, another of the telling methodologies. But coaching is an asking methodology. So coaching is collaborative. We believe that the coachee is resourceful and creative and is able to have the answers. And as the coach, the role is to ask a lot of questions, and that's going to lead to this personal and professional growth. So sometimes I get people saying to me, oh, well, you're going to tell me what to do, and I want you to guide me. And I'm like, no, that's not my job as a coach. Whenever I hear people say, oh, my coach told me, I'm like, really? Are you sure that they did? Maybe that's your interpretation, but I hope your coach doesn't tell you to do anything, because we definitely find that with a coaching approach, having the ownership of the outcomes is going to lead to more impact for the coachee and more likelihood that they are going to follow through with them. So we've talked about why coaching now, what is and what it's not. So I'd like to talk about how it can be used in an organization. And I want to tell you about the impact of coaching in an organization. And I think you can read through the data on the screen right here. But what a lot of people are coming to the coaching room with is a feeling of being stuck, and a feeling that as they move through the organization, the skills that got them to here are no longer going to be able to support them at the next level. So whilst they were able, for example, to communicate successfully as a level 1 manager, when they move to a director role, a manager of managers, they're communicating more with the board or different levels of scope of their work. The communication skills that they had or the confidence that they had in that role tends to be eroded. And they need to pick up new skills and new ways to communicate and new ways to think about themselves. This point about self-confidence, you would be amazed to know how many of your team think that they are an imposter and that they don't deserve to be here. They don't deserve to be in the room. So coaching is very powerful to remove some of that self-doubt and to give people a different perspective, increase self-esteem. And all of these things are getting in the way of productivity. When people are questioning themselves, when people are thinking about, why am I here? Oh no, I have to talk to this person about a difficult conversation. What's not getting done? Work. So when we are in drama, when we are in self-doubt, that has a huge impact on individual productivity. And especially if you're in a leadership position, then it's going to have a huge impact on the productivity of your team. And one of the things that we can think about is the coaching approach within the organization and how you're going to do that. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So here is my personal view, and I've sort of spoken to it a little bit on the previous slide about what gets in the way of human performance and productivity, especially amongst knowledge workers, and how coaching can help to support that. And the two things that come up to me in many of my coaching conversations, many of the needs gathering conversations that I have with stakeholders, is about bias and emotional intelligence and how we are handling emotional and social intelligence in the workplace. And when we think about bias, often as humans, we think that we are really logical, we're always rational, we're using data, we are thinking about these complex decisions and using what Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, called systems 2 thinking. But his research shows that about 95% of our decisions are actually made from our fast brain, the systems 1 brain, which is driven by emotion. It's very instinctive, it's automatic, we don't think about it, and it's very helpful. It's very helpful to use this systems 1 thinking, because otherwise, if we were questioning every single thing we did, we'd never get out of bed in the morning, and it would be very hard for us to achieve anything. However, when we are only being driven by systems 1 thinking, we may be being driven by one of over 180 cognitive biases. Now, I'm not going to talk through all of these in the rubric, but I do recommend that you go and check this out. It's fascinating to see what all of these biases are that might be influencing your personal and team workplace productivity. And a couple that I've highlighted here One is confirmation bias. I'm sure you've had the experience when it's a bit like the algorithm on the Amazon or something like that. You know, you search for something and then it brings up something which is similar. Our brains work in the same way. We tend to search for and favor ideas that match our own. So when we are trying to brainstorm around something or come up with an innovative idea, we do tend to be having confirmation bias about thoughts and processes that are already aligned with where we are more comfortable. Another thing I think many people have seen in the workplace is the bias of the sunk cost. So where we start to throw good money after bad, and we are thinking about, well, we're already so committed. This project has been already going on for 18 months. So we believe that we need to continue investing. And this bias stops us from really taking a step back and looking at maybe it's no longer relevant. Maybe the world has moved on. So that's a huge impact in productivity because people are no longer working on the right thing. They're just working on the old thing because we're scared of like losing what we've already invested. The bandwagon effect, also called as groupthink. We can see that when different ideas come up and we tend to think if everyone else is thinking the same thing, it must be the right idea. But as we know that a popular idea doesn't necessarily mean it's the most productive or effective idea for our team. And then the final one, which is coming up, although there's another 176, which might be in the list, is this idea of anchoring bias. And this can come up in team dynamics quite a lot. At the first idea that comes out or the first piece of information, we rely too heavily on that as the anchor of our thoughts. So often, especially in Asia specifically, when we have the anchoring bias as well as a hierarchy and status bias, when the boss speaks first, everything is around this idea. And instead, we have to be aware of what would it look like if we bring different ideas to the surface first, and then we can create a different anchor that we can start to discuss around. So coaching, how does it support these 180 biases? Of course, a 1 hour one-to-one session, or even, a year's worth of one-to-one sessions for an hour every month is not going to totally take away all of these biases, but it is a process of unlearning. And coaching can be a really valuable place where, with a trusted third party, you have a space to examine your decisions. Like, why did I make this decision? What were the beliefs that were influencing me? And why am I still feeling so uncomfortable with it after the fact? So what can I look at in terms of the decisions that I've made, and what might I want to do differently next time? Another thing that coaching can support is looking at the balance between systems 1 and systems 2 thinking. When we are very stressed, time poor, we are triggered in different ways and threatened, although our brain tricks us to think it's really threatening, but actually we're probably okay. It's just a presentation, it's just a meeting. But we tend to then go into those biases. So developing strategies that you can in the moment use so that you can be aware, oh, hang on, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now, what's coming up? And then you can find a different path. So you can use that logical part of your brain. You can use that slowed down part of your brain, which is going to give different information into the decision making. And then the third part that coaching supports around bias is just bringing it to the surface and questioning what was coming up. So a lot of the role that I have as a coach is to challenge my clients on their beliefs and to see if those beliefs are still supporting where they want to go in terms of their goals. So often the beliefs that we had have been really powerful to us up to today. But when we're trying to do something different, we're trying to do something new, then those beliefs can get in the way of us moving forward. So help coaching can help create new beliefs, and then through practice, looking at how we can create the new neural pathways, gathering more evidence about how we can move forward with those. So that's the piece on the cognitive bias. Now I want to talk about improved emotional intelligence. And I'm often called in for executive coaching to support people who they maybe had some feedback like this person is too emotional in the workplace, or they're struggling with one of their team members because this person is too emotional. And I always challenge this too emotional phrase and say, is this person too joyful? Is this person too engaged? is this person too enthusiastic? And often people look at me like I'm crazy and say, no, that's not the case at all. Usually they are in the emotions wheel in the areas around anger, fear, or sadness. And those emotions, when they show up unskillfully in the workplace, of course, can be very damaging for human relationships and how people are taking in the information that we talk about. So one of the things that coaching can support is developing emotional intelligence so that we're able to access all of these valuable emotions, which tell us that we care about something. You know, if you're really irritated by something your colleague said in a meeting, it's because there was an expectation that something different would happen. And that passion and that idea is very valuable to the organization. But when it's shrouded in anger, then of course it might be difficult for people to take that in. So we have to think about, how do I use the trigger from the emotion and the information from that emotion, and then find a way that I can communicate my message more skillfully in a way that can be taken into the ears and hearts and minds of the people that I'm talking to. And emotional intelligence, or EQ as it's known, really does make a difference, especially for leaders. You may have heard of how many people don't leave a job, they leave their boss. But 70% of the variance in employee engagement comes from the manager's emotional intelligence. And also looking at performance in teams as well as individuals, so many of the competencies around performance are linked to emotional intelligence rather than IQ. So something to think about in terms of what skills you're developing. We call them soft skills, but actually for many of my clients, they're becoming more and more important than their technical skills. Their technical skills at the leadership level that they're at are not to be questioned. They already have them. But when you're working in these complex networks, as we described at the beginning of the presentation, when we're working in those spaces, how we work with people, how we work through people, and that self-awareness of it is really important. So coaching can support having increased emotional intelligence, building this self-awareness and the self-regulation so that we can improve relations, not only with other people, but also with ourselves. A number of my clients, they'll have had an uncomfortable interaction in the workplace, and they spend a long time to process it, which is again getting in the way of productivity. So how can we self-regulate in the moment and then also work through and learn from that moment, that experience, and move to the next? And so finding these different ways to process our emotions that are aligned with our goals is really important as well. And coaching can support that too. And I wanted to share one experience from a client I was working with last year. She was a Japanese lady, and I think her example is quite common in terms of what happened before, during, and after coaching. I'm always very hesitant to tell too many of my clients' stories because as a coach, I really want to value the ethical practice of confidentiality. So I won't be talking about names or details in so much description. But when this client first came to me, as she describes here, she was really feeling very unstable. She was lost in her career and in her life. Although on paper, she had everything, a great job, loving family, wonderful partner, but there was something which was feeling unaligned for her, and really just feeling very emotionally exhausted and stuck. Once she started coaching, she found that the first thing of just investing that time and having 1 hour with a trusted third party who was questioning, who was challenging her, gave her the space to think about, what is it that I want? And what is it that I want? Not what my partner wants, not what society wants, not what my boss wants, but what is really aligned for me. And then really working with that client to help her to be aware of the voices that she's listening to and which ones are aligned to where she wants to be going. And finding that connection between where she wants to be and what is happening in her work really allowed her to do some career design within her role, to think about, what do I need to do more of? What would I no longer like to do? And then working with her employer to think about what that might look like. So really, at the end of the coaching, she said it was a transformational experience for her as to how she thought about herself, how she thought about her career, its place in her life, and how much she was able to trust herself. And so she said she was spending a lot less time going over again and again in the office, different interactions, different challenges, and she was able to move more into action rather than rumination. It was a great success story from that client. So with all of this in the background, if you are interested to engage a coach for your organization, there are so many different ways that you can do that. And the most important thing to think about, if you're the stakeholder, the HR business partner, or a leader who's thinking about coaching for someone, your team or members of your team or parts of teams, really be aligned on what the organization's goals are and who the person being coached, the coachee's goals. If they're not aligned, your coaching will not be successful. So you need to have a lot of conversations about why coaching, what now, what's our expectations. And then depending on your organization, you can think about whether you want to use internal coaching or an external coach. So internal coaching has kind of two flavors. One is developing the coaching skills within your organization of your managers. And there's many organizations around the world who are training people up. There's a company that I'm working with recently, and many of their managers have coaching skills. But one of the things that they struggle with is, where do I stop being a coach and become the manager? So sometimes there is a conflict of interest, because the manager who is also a coach really cares about the outcomes that, if I'm their team member, well, I want you to get this and I want you to be aligned with this and I want you to do it in a certain way because that impacts my performance. So just being aware that there is a sort of limit to the third party perspective that an internal manager as coach can bring. However, they are very close to the work and they are very close to that person, so they can bring in a lot more information around the development and this development plan. And coaching can be used like on the spot, and having a coaching approach is very powerful too. Another internal coaching approach is to have internal coaches who are working in a different part of the business, maybe in a different office, but they're also trained as coaches, and they can hold the confidentiality, but they also know the organization and those limits. And then the third is hiring someone like me as an external coach. And there are many different types of coaches out there, but the external coach will be someone who is a neutral third party. They may or may not have experience in your industry, and we might talk in the Q&A a little bit about that later, but really thinking about who is someone who is going to match well with your coachee. And to do that, you really need to have a chemistry call. And I always encourage my clients to be working with bring 2 or 3 coaches at least to that coachee's chemistry meeting, so that the coachee feels empowered about it. And there's also platforms as well, like BetterHelp or Coach Hub. There's a couple of platforms which are out there which make it more scalable. So you can work with external coaches, not just as a one-on-one, but through a platform. And there's a different price point that comes in here. I talked about individual or one-to-one or group coaching. And that, again, is going to depend on the benefit of working one-to-one. Is this is beautiful focus time. And for a senior leader, they often don't have anyone that they can talk to. But then the leader is ready to do all of these things. And then how do I take it back into my team? So when we work with team and systems coaching, one of the benefits is having the coach in the room who can bring out the different voices and bring out the different perspectives, and having that third party there can be really powerful. And then the final question, which I get asked a lot, is it important that my coach is credentialed? There's been quite a lot of scandal in the industry because anyone can just say, I'm a coach. And as I described earlier on, there's some misunderstandings about what coaching is. So one thing which is the benefit of a credential, I'm an ICF coach, International Coach Federation coach, there is a certain amount of rigor that as the hiring organization, you know that this person has gone through so many hours of training. They've also had some mentoring, some supervision. They've taken an exam. They've had feedback. So there's a little bit more of a hygiene factor around their skills. However, that being said, I have worked with coaches who are not credentialed by ICF or any other organization and have been really powerful, amazing partners who've really helped me personally, my personal and professional development. So it's something to think about and work out what's right for your organization and what you're looking for as well. So we've gone through these 5 points, and what I want to leave you with is coaching can be a really powerful ally in retention and growth of your talent. And of course, that really feeds into your productivity. Don't be fooled. The coach should never be telling you what to do. They are not like I'm doing now. They're not an expert backseat driver. They're the supportive passenger who's going to be helping you through developing different perspectives, creativity, new ways to solve old problems. And the human performance piece of productivity is really helping people to retell the stories that get in the way of them just doing their job. And as I mentioned, the coach approach is really available at all levels of the organization. So don't be limited by the mindset that you only need to hire a third-party coach, an external coach. There's many ways that you can embed it through different platforms, through training your people, or through as manager as coach or internal coaches as well. So thank you so much for listening today. We're going to move to Q&A. Look forward to hearing what you have to ask.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. I personally learned a lot from you today, and as someone who also got coaching before, I can really confirm that it changed my way of looking at my job, myself. It showed me what I wanted wasn't really what I wanted anymore, and how can I do my Ikigai, my passion, into where I am at the moment. I don't need to leave that place, or how can. So that was my biggest takeout. So I hope our viewers also enjoyed and will take away very important points. And thank you again. So let me ask you some more questions to delve into deeper understanding. So I know a little bit, but what Ikigai, maybe our viewers, that's a Japanese term.
Yes.
Can you more explain what Ikigai means and how do we align it with coaching, executive coaching?
Right. Well, I have a podcast where I've interviewed about 50 people about Ikigai, so I could talk about this question for hours. But at its base level, Ikigai is about like a life of purpose, or a way of approaching your life. Iki means to live, and Gai is purpose. A lot of people have come to Ikigai from the West through a 4-part Venn diagram, which is actually a purpose Venn diagram. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? And I think that's a brilliant coaching tool to think about purpose. However, Ikigai is a little bit more about the feeling of Ikigai. Miyako Kamiya, who wrote a book, Ikigai ni Tsuite, talks about Ikigai Kan, which is like the emotion of Ikigai. And from my coaching perspective, I'm very interested in how can people make more moments of feeling Ikigai Kan, feeling alive, feeling lit up, or maybe feeling a deep sense of peace. There's many different ways that this emotion can show up, and it's a fully lived experience. So, there's no productivity data around Ikigai, and researchers find it very hard to manage because because it's individually judged. But when we apply it to executive coaching, for example, feeling when you're at work that you are learning, feeling that you matter, the work that you do matters, that there are people that you are influencing either in your workplace day to day or through the work that you do, that's very powerful. And then, this idea of shaping your career to make more moments of Ikigai Kan. So what you said to me really resonated. I'm thinking about another group of clients I was working with. They were working for a very large organization, maybe 30,000 people in Japan. And somebody said, well, this company doesn't suit me. There's no roles for me here. And I said, okay, what floor do you work on? Like, I work on the 7th floor. I said, do you know what's happening on the 8th floor? Like, no. Do you know what's happening like on the 7th floor in that block over there? No. Like, okay, so maybe you need to see what is happening in this 30,000 person organization and think about, what do I want to do? What do I want to bring to work? And then maybe how does that align with what the company is doing? And I think that in this world where jobs are changing so fast, the old sort of paradigm of like a job progression no longer exists. And I think that for many of the knowledge workers that I work with anyway, they can craft their job in a way which is meaningful to the organization as well as meaningful to themselves. And when you have that alignment, everybody wins.
No, that's great. Yeah. I hope we can all be paid for our Ikigai, but maybe we can do our Ikigai where we are paid for. So as you say, that's a great insight. Thank you so much. So secondly, I want to ask, like, could you share why coaching is becoming increasingly important in today's world?
I think, like back to that point from the Deloitte research, is that the way that knowledge workers specifically are being asked to show up is using those soft skills, is using those networks and communication. And I think that coaching's ability, it's still quite a young industry.
Yeah.
So it's grown exponentially so much. You can see the ICF research on that as well. But I think people are realizing this power of conversation and the power of listening, and as well as all of the information around bias. We look at that and see that, the stories that we're telling ourselves might not be helping us. And I think that more people in leadership roles is becoming normalized. Coaching used to be something to do, before you fired someone. We're going to give them some coaching. It's kind of remedial. It's a bit of a punishment. But then as an organization, we said that we coached them and they didn't change, so we can let them go. Now I see a lot more people are getting coaching high potential, or, they're stepping into a new role. And one thing which changed during COVID as well was I was getting more coaching inquiries that were like from a wellness perspective. And what I was saying about, make sure your goals are aligned. Many stakeholders were coming and saying, we just need to give this leader a place to ventilate a little bit, as well as to get some support. We don't want to check in with you. We don't have any goals from us. Just please make sure that they have this space. And that was a huge change, that coaching that wasn't so sort of data productivity goals driven, especially in that big time of crisis.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I can empathize the importance of well-being and coaching, how it supports it, especially nowadays in our current lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah. So my third question is like, can you share like a particularly impactful coaching experience that highlights this transformative effect of coaching? You mentioned one example,
yes,
but maybe from a leadership perspective, if you had any.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm a bit hesitant to share my clients' stories because I really want to keep that confidentiality of the room. But maybe I could share a story from my personal experience of being coached.
Okay.
And I was working on a project, a personal project around my Ikigai, which was working as an artist. And I remember my coach gave me a really challenging opportunity. So I was, I really want to write this book and publish it, and I couldn't set the deadline, and life is happening. I have kids and my job, and it was just being stuck. It wasn't productive at all. And my coach said, okay, here's maybe three possible ways that you can bring yourself some accountability. And the one that I chose was take a photo of your current bank account, send it to someone that you trust, and say, if I don't do this thing for me, publish this book, self-publish this book on Amazon, by this date, you can have all of this money. And I remember, I'm getting goosebumps remembering it now. I took the photo, I sent it to one of my best friends from junior high school back in the UK, and it definitely gave me that external push and that accountability that I needed. And I remember when it was 3 weeks before that deadline, I was starting to panic a little bit, oh no, hang on, I don't really understand how this works. But luckily I was able to do by this deadline. If my coach hadn't given me a different perspective on how could I challenge myself, I would never, I don't know if this book would still be, even have been published. But it allowed me to get over that hump and also have the accountability. And it was something that made me a little bit scared There were real like stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that my friend wouldn't have accepted my bank account, but I didn't go too much into that. Yeah. So just that transformation from being something I want to do and I've been thinking about doing it and I've always wanted to do it, to actually taking steps and taking action and like hitting a deadline. Coaching really helped me through that. And I've heard those stories with my clients who, should I set this business up or not? Should I go for this promotion? Many things, moving people from inaction to action, which is really heart of productivity, I think.
Yeah. And what was the book about?
The book was called Can Giraffes Swim?
Okay.
It's a really stupid children's book. It's actually a nonsense book. And I created it from an art class in COVID, online art class in COVID. And you can get it on Amazon.
Art and your work together.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions more, and then we finish. I wanted to ask: are there specific industries, especially, can benefit from coaching, or who are applying more for coaching?
I feel this is probably from my bias as working mostly with knowledge workers.
Okay.
But I believe that there are good case studies of using coaching and coaching approach in, like frontline workers, in hospitals, in factories, plants, and so on, because we're all human at the end. But what I find is that what helps coaching to be effective is buy-in from leadership and managers. So that support. So if people don't think it's going to work, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how about how to assess the impact of coaching? Like, are there any metrics, or how can managers or a workplace can see the impacts or measure it?
Yes, this was my big edge when we were planning this and talking about this. I was trying to look for metrics around coaching and decent data. And there really hasn't been a lot of good research done from an academic perspective. And then a little bit, when you're reporting on your own industry, of course, we only tell ICF is only telling the good data. So one of the things, that I work with my clients, and I'm really working with individuals within organizations or with teams, is to say at the end of this coaching, let's say 6 to 8 months from now, how do you want to see this person? If to say it was a success, what would they be doing differently in meetings? What would they be doing differently in this area of communication? What would the change behavior look like? And then checking in along the coaching to see how close are we, right? Of course, you can use things like a 360 or a psychometric assessment to get kind of more data around that. And many of my clients do that as well around those particular skills.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, like, where do you see the future of coaching, especially regarding, like, in terms of leveraging technology and adapting to changing working dynamics?
Yes. Well, I was, before we recorded today, I thought, what, I've never tried one of those AI avatar, like a AI coach. So I had my first experience, and I think we're not quite there yet in terms of the coaching skills, but I think that AI as a partner to a human coach is definitely going to increase. And it also allows scalability. And there are things which, AI can do really well. And there's some ethical issues still now, because we need to make sure that our client has agreed to be recorded so that we can then analyze the conversation. We can analyze which were the questions that the client didn't answer, or even, how much from the coach development perspective, how much did the coach speak? Was the coach talking too much? Was the coach using advisory language? In which case, are they against those competencies? So I think it has AI and its ability to look at language and nuance is very powerful, as well as AI's ability to do appropriate nudges. Right? So after the coaching session, sending well-targeted follow-up information, articles, this is the best timing to kind of follow up in order to create a habit. I think AI can be a real asset for the client from that perspective as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah,
thank you.
It was a pleasure again. Thank you once again, Jennifer, for joining us today. And I'm sure that our viewers also enjoyed this P-Talk. And before we close, I would like to thank our viewers again for joining us, and please subscribe if you're interested. And see you in the next P Talk, and goodbye for today.